just talking about the reaction that you've had so far from folks who have heard the album.
Well, like, yeah, it was kind of interesting. You know, some people really loved it. Some people hated it, as usual. You know, well, no, not some people hated it. Nobody really hated it. It was more like, no, some people just misinterpreted, or they're not ready for it, or whatever. You know,
right? And what do you think they wouldn't be ready for?
Well, I mean, it's not like, I mean, what we do is we talk a lot about, like, we sing about kind of heavier stuff, you know?
Right.
And if you're at a certain point in your life, you're not there, you know? And some people don't want to face, you know, their lives, or like for example, like the NME review was like this album's a bit of a downer. That's not what we need right now, you know. It's not.
That's ridiculous.
What we need right now. It was a little on the ridiculous side, and it was just before everybody started doing like these black posts, you know.
Yeah.
Online, you know about these black posts? Everybody's, you know, feigning wokeness, and so I found it pretty funny. Mama, children. Yeah. 4, 1, 2, 3. Yeah. So it was funny because, you know, some songs on the record in its own way deal with that stuff, in the moment stuff.
Yeah.
And it was just funny to, like, so this skinny white kid is telling people that they shouldn't listen to this because it's not what we need right now in this moment.
Oh,
sung by me.
Right. Yeah. Gotcha.
So, and then the very, like, in the same week, they're black posts, and we stand with black artists, and, you know, it's like, shut the fuck up, you full of shit. You know, like, they're not. It's just, you know, as everybody says, performing, you know, performative stuff. So that was kind of interesting to observe. And so that's all been part of our. So we released this album, Lovers Rock, in the middle of this pandemic, and in the middle of this extra wokeness that everybody's going to have right now. And so I thought that was kind of interesting.
I'll bet.
Mama, here you go. Anyway, that's my story.
Well, it's part of the story, I think, because, and I think you hit on something, and I think part of the situation is that, like, all the comparisons that I've read about the band compare you to 80s acts like the Smiths and Bowie and whatever, and it seems somewhat disingenuous. I mean, I saw a headline where it says you're the best 80s band to emerge out of the 21st century. And then when I listened to the record, I was like, well, what are you talking about? So I'm wondering what you think about that.
Well, you know, it's just part of the game, you know. I mean, I've been in a rock band for 25 years, the same rock band for 25 years, and it's just a means to contextualize what we do because it's super indescribable in some ways, and people kind of grasp for words in vain most of the time to describe what we do.
Right.
But like we pull from the 80s, the 90s, the 70s heavily,
Yeah.
the 60s like crazy, the 50s, and not to mention traditional music like gospel music and folk music. We pull from it all.
Right.
You know, we're not like the Ramones where we just do one punk thing or whatever, you know, like
Right.
we'll do a Ramonesy thing within the same song as, you know, 1 minute we sound like, you know, the Ramones, and the next minute we'll sound like Talk Talk in the same song.
Yeah.
And so this is the thing that confounds people. So they just say, oh, it sounds like the 80s because they heard one guitar bit that sounds like the 80s. So it's like,
Right,
okay,
right.
it sounds like the 80s. Okay, let's just end it. I can't think more than that because I'm a lazy, pathetic record reviewer.
Oh man, but I know what you mean. Everybody likes to pigeonhole something, put their kind of musical thumb on it, and then they can just write it off as whatever it is.
And move on to the next record because they got a virtual stack of CDs this high on their desk.
Yeah.
You know, so.
But I will say I've been listening to a lot of new music because it's, we're all locked down and we have lots of time, and the situation is a lot of the new music from a lot of new artists, and like you say, you've been around for 20 years, but everybody's mixing it up so much that it's just virtually impossible to say that about anybody these days,
Indeed.
Because they all have access to hear everything from like the 50s on or 40s or whatever on up, it's easy.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Well, it's funny because for me growing up, that was just like what I was exposed to,
Sure.
Like I grew up in a church, like going to church when I was a kid. So I was like exposed to a lot of gospel music and church music, really buttoned down shit,
Yep.
But my father was also like, he was a jazz musician when I was born, and he was, such a huge fan of Coltrane, massive Coltrane fan, like to the point where my parents' internet network or whatever was like a Love Supreme, and the password was Coltrane or something like that. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
Hardcore. Like it permeated every conversation, that you would have with my dad would always come back to Coltrane. And he was a saxophone player. He played on a couple of Dears records. And yeah, exposed to Motown, exposed to when my brother got older, he turned me on to rock music. That was like a big turning point in my life, was when my brother exposed me to U2 and what's up, buddy? You want some more ravioli? Oh, okay, sorry. So yeah, so my brother exposed me to like stuff like U2, and which was like a gateway drug, because then I discovered like REM and The Cure and all that stuff, the Smiths and all that stuff. That was in my teen years, and that's when I discovered playing guitar.
Right.
Which really informed, like I could have gone a lot of different directions, like when I also was exposed to Prince when I was like 11 years old, and I worshipped Prince I worshipped him until he died, but
Right.
and I still do worship at the altar of Prince, but at the same time, you know, like I just kind of, it was just, I was just sort of swinging from vine to vine, you know. I discovered Prince when I was 11, 12 years old, Purple Rain, and then I went backwards from there and just gobbled up everything. And then eventually discovered more rock music and just kind of kept going from there. But as I got older, I started going back to, you know, getting into music from, you know, when I was younger. So I started listening to like Miles Davis and like, you know, and listening to tons of Motown, you know, and just like, and that really informs a lot of what we do, you know, is that it pulls from a huge library of music, is inspired by a huge library of music. And it's like, we're kind of like mad scientists in this way, where it's like, what if, you know, we had this like Bill Spector vibe, but meets like the Cult Electric, you know?
Fantastic.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Now, I thought it's interesting that you named the album Lovers Rock, which, you know, gives people a kind of false impression on what to expect. Is that what you planned on?
I wouldn't say that, because here's what happened. You know, when we started work on the record, you know, we were kind of dabbling in that, stylistically, but then things kind of turned into something else, you know. and as they do when you're working on, when you spend 2-3 years working on a record, and so I guess like the thing that stuck the most was the name. You know, the working title of the project was Lovers Rock the whole time. So we just kind of stuck with it, and that's fine. You know, like I think it was this like, it was a question of really kind of like letting the record be what it was going to be, and not really like adhering to any sort of like campy kind of, because, you know, we could have easily made something that came off like a Lovers Rock kind of thing, and but I think that in the end, you know, it became a Dears record called Lovers Rock.
Right, I think you're right.
But it's in reference to the spirit of that, you know, that music.
Gotcha. I was hoping we could touch on a couple of the songs, just to, one that caught my ear was I Know What You're Thinking and It's Awful. I mean, it's the title alone will draw you into it or away, depending on how you're feeling at the time. Can you tell me a little bit about how that came about?
Well, I don't know if you were following a news story a couple summers ago or last summer. There was like some Canadian kids were like, they were wanted for manslaughter, or second-degree murder, and so there was a nationwide manhunt for them, or North American-wide manhunt for them, and I was fascinated by this story, and obsessed with it, to be honest with you. And and so I just couldn't. I couldn't. Uh, I couldn't get it off my mind, and one morning I woke up and I heard like it's one of these songs. Every once in a while, a song comes in and it's like you write it in like in an hour. It's like you have it all laid out, demoed it. You know what you're gonna say. You know the melody. You know the chords. You know the changes. Everything. Some songs don't work that way, but every once in a while, like, and this song, in the middle of writing for this record, just like I got up, I heard this song, I went into the studio, and by lunchtime it was recorded.
Man.
And and then I sent it to the band and I said I wrote this morning. And that morning, the kids, well, two bodies were found, and it turned out to be these kids, these teenagers, and I kept thinking about their parents,
Yeah.
like, and I remember something that my old man used to say, and he would say, he'd say, like, whenever you were maybe up to something, or like not up to something, but just like, he would always try to allude to the idea that he knew us better than we knew ourselves. And so he would say, I know you like a book.
Right.
And one day my older brother retorted, am I a bestseller? And my dad just, he loved that. He just like,
right.
he died laughing. He was so entertained by that. So that just became like a thing in our house. And he was, so whenever, but then whenever you were in trouble, he would say, I know you like a book and you're not a bestseller.
Man, that's rough.
And so I just remembered all this, coupled with this story of these kids and imagining their parents, probably kind of always knew that they'd wind up in trouble,
right.
somehow, but felt really powerless to it because they're their own person,
Yeah.
And then tie in the fact that, now I fully understand how that feels to know your kids really well, and like, what they're going to do because you've been watching them grow their whole lives. It's just like, it's just like you could see all the behavioral patterns play out.
Yeah.
What's going to happen. How it's going to, and I can already see it happening in myself. So you take this new story, my own personal story with my old man, and my own personal story with my own kid, and you get, I know what you're thinking, and it's awful.
Gotcha. That's how it happens. Now, the other track I wanted to just touch on was Still Lost. It's the one I think you've got Jake Clemens playing saxophone on that from the E Street Band. Yeah. So how did he come about getting involved with the record? And I will say, with all the comparisons to the 80s band, when his sax comes in, it reminds me exactly of the Psychedelic Furs. So there you go.
Yeah, totally. I didn't even realize that when it was happening until after, he just kind of did his thing and it was perfect,
Yeah.
But actually what happened was I had gone into the Hotel to Tango where I do a lot of work, and my friend Howard runs that studio, and he was doing a session with Jake, and their bass player wasn't there, and so he was like, can you hang around a little longer? So I just kind of sat in on bass as they worked out some stuff. I don't know if I think they recorded some stuff, but I had no idea if I wound up, because I didn't even know with the music at all. I was just, I was just filling in.
Right.
Just totally spur of the moment, spontaneous, just because I walked in and was like, can you play bass? I'm like, yeah, I could try. And so I played a bit of bass in a session, and then we went out to dinner after, or lunch or dinner or whatever, snack, something. We went out for a meal after, and we hung around, and then we kind of kept in touch. And then, actually, I got a really funny story actually about this because,
Okay.
So anyway, I was on tour, and and I had been on tour for about 3 weeks in Europe, and my second to last show was in Dublin, and I get a text from Jake, and he's like, "Hey man, I see you're playing in Dublin. I'm gonna, try to come by. I'm in Dublin. So he just happened to be there as well, and he was just starting. He was just starting his tour, and my tour was just. And I had literally one more show in Waterford, and I was going home, and my God, I couldn't wait to get home. And I expressed that. I said, "Yeah, I got one more show. Can't wait to get home." And so then, we didn't connect in Dublin. I came home, went straight back into the studio to finish work on the record, and texted him. I said, "Hey, when are you back? Can you play on this track?" And he was like, "Yeah, I'm back on this day." And we started working out a schedule, and then finally he came to my house because I have a studio here where we did a lot of the post production. And he came to my house, and we were sitting at the dinner table because obviously I'm going to feed him. It's at dinner time, and so we're sitting at the dinner table, and he goes, "I got to tell you, man, when I texted you in Dublin, because I don't know if I told you, but I fired my bass player, and at the beginning of that tour, and when I texted you, I was going to ask you if you could stick around, since you were already there, if you could stick around for 3 more weeks and play on tour." And I was like, "Oh," and it's like when I got your message that you couldn't wait to go home, I was like, "Oh, I can't do it to him."
Oh well.
So that was the story of how he came to play on the record, but I almost filled in on bass for him on tour.
Cool.
So that was just like a funny thing.
Right. That's cool. So I'm curious because the core of the band is yourself and Natalia, right?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, there's Luch. He's been around since Degeneration Street, which is my God, it's like over 10 years ago. So he's a drummer.
Right.
And then Steve's been with us. This is his first record. He's been with us on guitar for the last. He toured a lot of the last record, so he's been around with us for a few years. And then there's Remy.
Yeah.
Blanc. He's brand new. So this is his first record, and he literally has not toured with us yet.
Right.
So we're kind of a fluid kind of thing. People come and go and come and go. You can never rule out somebody coming back.
Right.
Just because the Dears are always going to be going. We're always, and it either fits into your life or it doesn't. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't.
I was wondering if it feels like you're always in a band or never in a band because of the relationship you have.
It's kind of both.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
It's kind of a little. I mean, sometimes I don't even feel like I'm in the band. Like half the time.
Oh, I'm having trouble hearing you.
Oh, hello.
There we go.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I like right now I don't feel like I'm in a band at all.
Right.
I spend most of my days looking after my children, and feeding people, as you know.
Fair enough. So when was the last time the band actually played together?
Good question. I guess it was in the studio. Yeah,
When was it?
when we made the record.
Crikey.
We were getting all ready. We had rehearsals scheduled, and then the plug got pulled on everything.
Yeah.
So so that was that. It's just, everything's just been kicked down the road, and I think if we were a new band on our first or second album, I'd probably be stressed, but I'm actually very relieved
Right.
to be, well, mostly because there's other projects I've been really wanting to do, and now I'm able to do them.
Right.
And I was a little bit stressed out about the prospect of, being on tour and trying to do these projects. Like, it just was very stressful, but now I can there's a lot of things I could do. There's a lot of home projects I could do. There's also a lot of projects in the studio I could do. And so it's kind of really freed me up in a great way. And then I'll have I'll have some of these projects in the can as I move forward on tour with the Dears next year.
Right.
And then I can just choose when to drop those projects,
Gotcha. Have you ever been down to New Zealand?
Oh my God, I don't think so. We've been to Australia many times.
Well, it's close.
Yeah, but I'd love to go to New Zealand. Oh my God.
Well, come on down. Yeah, hopefully things will come. We're all locked down as well, and borders are closed everywhere, so not much happening in the live music scene. It's very frustrating.
Wow. Yeah, I'll bet.
And are you feeling like you have the urge to play, or are you happy with where you are and sitting around and working on your next thing?
That's a good question. I'm sure I'll feel it in a month or two,
Right.
where I'll feel like, I think I'm always ready to go on tour. Like, you're just kind of like, it's a weird thing when you've done as much touring as I have. Like, it's a feeling that you could embrace or just whatever, like
Gotcha.
you could just kind of, like, if I had to go on tour next week, as much as it would be a big pain in the ass for me, I could get myself ready and just go out there and do it.
Right.
But and if I'm not touring until next year, it's like, okay. Like, I could go either way with it, only because I've done so much touring, like
Gotcha.
so much touring that I don't, my relationship with it is that it's very automatic, and like getting on stage and doing what you do, it's just like, it's a program that's deeply embedded in my system now, that it doesn't take much for it to fire up. You know what I mean?
Well, hopefully you'll fire up again soon. Oh,
yeah, indeed.
Thanks for talking to me. I really appreciate it, especially while you're cooking. It's going to be a first for me anyway, so that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Good luck with the record. Hopefully it does everything you want it to do, and hopefully maybe sometime you can come down here and play for us. It would be great.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
Well, is that like your record collection in the background?
I'm afraid so, yeah.
Wow. That is
I got carried away.
No, that's cool. I think that's great. That's wonderful. Well, take care of yourself, man.
Thank you very much. You too.
All right. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.